Okay, Kevin, thank you for joining us for the season finale of TMG People First Podcast. It's great that you're here, man. Really appreciate you stopping by.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, the legend, Kevin, podcaster, and we'll get into a lot of his background at Reagan. Really excited for this conversation.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet. You bet. So the first thing we ask all of our podcast guests is, what's the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning?
If I got a good night's sleep, I thank the Lord for a good night's sleep. As I get a little older, a good night of slepe isn't something that I take for granted anymore. So that's my very first thing.
Are you not a good sleeper?
I used to be, and now it's possible I'll wake up at 3:30 and my mind will start going. I think this may be a product of phones and technology and everything, but I can have a little trouble falling back to sleep. So I've just learned to kind of roll with it. But yeah, those mornings, if I get awakened by my alarm, I'm a happy, very thankful person. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I've been awake after my alarm in a long time either. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
So Kevin, explain to our audience what Reagan Consulting is, how you serve the insurance industry, why you exist, and kind of lay it out for us, because you're in a business, I don't want to say there's not a lot of competitors, but it's not something that is typically a whole industry or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we are a consulting and investment banking firm that is focused exclusively on insurance distribution. So we don't work with carriers other than to work with them as respects their distribution. But we work with agents and brokers, retail, wholesale, across the whole spectrum.
You consult and you give stock prices, you do valuations, you do mergers, acquisitions.
A variety of things that fall under consulting or investment banking. We've typically thought about it as valuation. That's a big cornerstone. We do a lot of valuations of privately held insurance brokers that need a stock price each year for a variety of reasons. You know, they might have an ESOP, or they might have a perpetuation plan where they're trying to pass stock down from generation to generation, and so we will help set the price there. But we do a lot of strategic consulting, strategic planning, facilitation, growth consulting, really helping firms think about what it is that they want to accomplish 5, 10, 15 years out, and then do everything we can to help them figure out how to make that happen. And so a lot of what we do is benchmarking. We're pretty well known for the best practices study, which is a collaboration with an industry association that we've done for, 30 or so years now. Big benchmarking report that really helps agents and brokers understand how they're doing relative to their peers. And so known for a variety of things, but those are some of the bigger things.
We were talking earlier, and then also I heard you mention it on your podcast around the pace of play of the industry.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of velocity around acquisitions, a lot of velocity around private equity money getting involved over the past decade or so or plus. Where are you seeing the compression happen? What is that? Yeah. What is that speed and pace doing to the industry?
Well, and my guess is that this is happening across the entire U.S. economy as more private equity has made its way into all sorts of different industries. You guys see it, with a lot of your clients. I mean, across industries. We work with one, and we know that over the last 5 years, about 75% of the M&A in insurance brokers has been private equity-backed companies. And if you go into a different industry like wealth management, you'd find the same story. You'd find it across a whole bunch of industries. And you'd say, well, why does that necessarily change the pace of the industry? And what I would say is that I know a lot of agency leaders and agency owners today that are kind of tired. And the statement that they make to me is, man, it is like the pace of this just keeps accelerating. The table stakes for succeeding in our business, for being able to grow, are getting higher and higher. Why is that? Is it just the evolution of the economy, a more mature economy, a more mature industry? And as I've stepped back and thought about that, I think it's actually bigger than that. I think private equity is actually a major contributor to this. And here's why. You think about, like, in the old days, our client 20 years ago was a group of sales guys who owned this business. And they would sit in a room and they might do annual planning where they decide, how much they want to produce the next year, how much they want to grow. It was totally up to them how fast they wanted that pace to be. Today, a whole bunch of firms in our industry are institutionally owned, and those institutions, frequently backed by private equity, have come in and basically said, look, we're going to pay you a valuation for your business that's as high as has ever been paid in this industry. In exchange for that, we're going to expect that you're going to figure out how to get us 20 to 30% annual returns on that investment. And that's going to require you to grow faster than you've grown historically. And you're going to do that through a combination of increased organic growth and increased mergers and acquisitions. You're going to go out and find firms to buy. And so suddenly today, if you look at the institutionally owned firms in our industry, the average growth rate of the 60 on the top 100 list is like 23%. It's over twice that of the pure privately held firms. And so I think those firms are setting a pace that the privately held firms, growing much slower, are saying, man, we're not going to be able to compete with the resources they're going to be able to build with their scale unless we accelerate ourselves. And so I think there's this external pressure that's filtered in through private equity that's causing everybody to have to step up. And that's great for some, but it's hard for others. And so folks are having to decide whether they can keep up with that. And that's the firms that decide that they can't keep up with it. Many of them decide to actually sell to private equity.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like there's a bubble in sight?
I don't know that I would say that there's a bubble coming. Agency values have been at all-time highs for 2 or 3 years now. There's some cyclicality to that, so it wouldn't surprise me to see the valuations come down a little bit from the all-time highs. But I don't think there's a bubble here. I mean, agencies, insurance brokers are very fundamentally sound businesses. That's why private equity loves them in the first place. I mean, they don't have big inventories. They don't have to have big R&D budgets. That technology requirements are modest. They're people businesses. They're great businesses, and if you look over the last 35 years, the worst year that insurance brokers, we measure all this and we have forever. If you look at the worst year insurance brokers had on record, it was 2009 when the economy contracted, the Great Recession. The median insurance broker's revenue went down by 1.9% in 2009. That was the worst of it. That was the only year we've ever recorded negative organic growth, and it was less than negative 2%. Compare that with like high-end retail, which was just, crashing.
Arizona real estate.
Yeah, you can come up with plenty of examples, but insurance brokers are quiet, consultative businesses that do well in most economic conditions.
Well, and because of this pace of play and this pressure for return, I think we're seeing a war on talent maybe that we have never experienced. And with that, I guess I would ask you, if you were an agency owner, how would you position your agency to win in any circumstance? So even in the Great Recession, it looks like the average was a 1.9 decrease. However, now with the pace of play, with the more competition out there, what would you focus on? 2 or 3 things to win in any market. We call it here anti-fragile, meaning the more stress you have, the more stuff you can't control, the better it can make your agency, the more successful you could be. But what would be the 2 or 3 things you would focus on, or that you advise your clients to focus on to win in any market? Because there's a lot out of our control. There really is.
Yeah. No, to me, the number one issue towers above everything else. There's other things, but the number one issue towers above them. And that is, you've got to build a culture that people want to be a part of. And, I look at you guys in your new office space here in Phoenix, the market position that you guys have developed through patient, long-term, brick by brick building of your business. And you guys are a great example of somebody that's built a culture that people want to be a part of. And if you don't start there, you can do all these other things to try to defend your business, but first and foremost, it's got to be an invitation to the right kind of people that are they're relational people. Mm-hmm. They buy into your values of how to serve clients. You've got to build a business around people like that and establish a culture where that is normal. I think that's your number one line of defense and your number one growth strategy. Beyond that, you've got to make sure that, as a business, you're paying people appropriately, you're equipping them well, you're supporting them in the marketplace to be successful in the various jobs that they've got. But the most important thing by far is culture.
Love it. I'll give a question to Jason and Kevin here. What are some surprising industry trends that you guys are experiencing in EB and then the overall industry, Kevin?
You want to go first, Jason, in EB?
Yeah, sure. I think probably the most surprising trend, Guff and Kevin, is that we're still not seeing the movement related to the legislation that's passed. Transparency and disclosure and compensation, everything around the Consolidated Appropriations Act, all the hospital payer transparency and coverage. So all the framework that the Department of Labor laid down for companies to actually improve their benefits, drive bottom line profits, improve their benefits for their employees. We're seeing just a resistance and an apathy towards that. That's just amazing.
Why do you think that is?
I think the status quo has made a lot of agencies and a lot of people rich for many years. And it's just really up against it. Like, we know about firms that are, instead of disclosing a fee, they're demanding an audit fee from the carrier or TPA and collecting monies now in other ways that they hadn't before. So it's just an interesting mix, and I think there's a reckoning coming in this space. So that's a trend, both from the standpoint of just the apathy in the market, as well as the I don't give a care factor about the legislation that's been passed, and it's really grounded in some nefarious activity, in my view.
What about you, Kevin? What are some surprising trends?
I think the surprising trend in insurance brokers over the last 15 or 20 years has been the ability for the largest firms out there to build scale, the likes of which we've never seen in our industry before. Mm-hmm. Around the year 2000, there were 2 billion-dollar brokers, Marsh and Aon. So it had taken 250 years of an industry to get to 2 firms that had $1 billion in revenue. Today, 25 years later, there's 18 billion-dollar brokers out there.
Unreal.
And yet, a lot of them are kind of amalgamations of just a lot of agencies that have been acquired. And so, I guess a surprise within the surprise. A, it's surprising that they've built that much scale. I'd say B, so far, it's also surprising that they haven't figured out more effective ways to actually leverage that scale. Mm-hmm. Most of them are still kind of hodgepodge companies of a lot of firms that have been acquired and not really marshaling their size to some kind of power where they can really dictate some of what's going on in the marketplace.
Why do you think that is? 'Cause with all that money and success,
I think it's primarily because during the stage that we've been in, the stage of amassing this size, building it, it's been led by salespeople that are really good at wooing people into kind of an M&A strategy to join their firm. And so those people are not operators generally. They're visionary salespeople that can woo acquisitions. I think we're probably going to go through now a new stage. We're already going through it. And the interest rate spike of 2 or 3 years ago actually led us to this place because some of the most aggressive acquirers had to back off. Interest rates went way up. They had to shut off their M&A spigot for a while and really focus on, okay, we've got to integrate this business. So integration became the big buzzword.
Yeah.
And so now they're working at those integrations, and I don't think the likes of the independents out there, the Mahoneys of the world, look at those guys and say, "Oh man, we're scared of what they're doing." They are really
On record. We are not scared.
No, I know you're not.
Anti-fragile guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I would say is that given enough time, enough capital, and enough leadership around operational integration, I think some will actually become more formidable competitors than they've been. So the advice would be don't underestimate where they're going. But thus far, there hasn't been just this compelling weaponry that they've developed that can consistently beat the privately held firm. I'll tell you something that the leader of one of the public brokers told me in a meeting one time years ago, and I've never forgotten this. He said, "Look, we're publicly traded. We're kind of the big dog out there." He said, "The toughest thing for me to compete with is not my peer public brokers. When I go up against those guys, we win some, we lose some." He goes, "The toughest thing for me to go up against is the locally owned, sophisticated insurance broker that lives and breathes every issue that's going on with their clients and that will take the Saturday night phone call from a client who's got a problem." He said, "We're a publicly traded company. I can't really compete with that." And I thought, you just gave me a talking point for the rest of my career.
Guffey, how many Saturday night phone calls have you taken?
I have taken a few of those, but really, if you can get your work done during the week, you shouldn't have to do that. But we're in the business of emergencies. We're in unexpected. Right. And so when you take a phone call on a weekend, and your best clients don't want to call you on the weekend.
That's right.
And so if they're calling you, I want to answer. You deal with a lot of high performers, a lot of owners of agencies. Sometimes you may have to look them right in the eyes and tell them the truth, maybe on their finances or things like that, or maybe they're having a lot of success. So this is kind of a long question, but how do you help them stay grounded or stick to the data and have basically they believe the data and they listen to you. Because I remember at a strategic meeting 3-4 years ago, I asked you, "Hey, how do we keep up this energy here? How do we keep going?" And you said, "Stay curious. Just stay curious, stay curious, stay curious." And maybe you say that to every agency owner, but I remember you said that. You said, "Stay curious, you guys will be fine." And so I kind of thought,
Well,
how do you stay?
Duffy, I think we were sitting next to each other at dinner that night, and I think you peppered me with like 300 questions.
Yeah, that's true.
But for me, honestly, I think that was really cool, and I think that's why I would have said stay curious, because I think once you lose that curiosity, you lose some of the fire that's going to help you figure things out. You're a guy that wants to figure things out. To me, I've been doing this for 34 years now.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot of hard lessons along the way. And one of those lessons is listen before you speak. And I remember years ago, I had somebody I didn't know called me, and they said, it was 2 guys on the phone, and they called and they said, "Hey, we want to do an M&A strategy, and we want your help." And I remember I was kind of feeling a little impatient, and I'd just seen like 4 or 5 firms in a row want to do the same thing, and they'd all failed at it. And I'm just like, guys, let me tell you something. That's not what you want to do. and I tried to, without even knowing these people, without even knowing their story, I'm immediately telling them some answer, just that's more rooted in the day that I'm having than it is really in trying to understand them. And it's funny, that was just some random Tuesday 20 years ago. I'm still a little haunted by that because that's just such a gross overstep of what my job is. My job is to listen to people and figure out, okay, you would ask me something, and then I should ask you 2 or 3 follow-up questions to understand what you really are seeking. And then if I'm doing my job, I'm helping you then kind of figure out how you might accomplish that. But quick answers, not a good strategy, especially for somebody that does what I do.
So after 34 years of being in the space, what are you surprised by today? I mean, not specifically right now, but maybe you are. But in general, what surprises you still?
Yeah, I guess something that surprises me is you guys know, because you've been in the industry for a while, our industry has gone through all these moments where outsiders were saying our industry was done. Back in the mid-1990s, there was this consumer advocate guy in the state of Texas who had a big voice, and he was saying insurance brokers, because of the internet, insurance brokers are going to go, they're going to be the buggy whip makers of the late 20th century. He was predicting the demise of the insurance broker. And, 35 years later, insurance brokers are stronger than they've ever been. Valuations are higher than they've ever been. The success of the industry is greater than it's ever been. And so what's interesting to me is, and there's been a bunch of peaks and valleys like that. You had the internet boom and bust in early 2000. You had 9/11. You had, the Great Recession in 2009. If I look back, what's interesting to me, and I think surprising, is that what it takes to be a great insurance broker today is not that different than what it took in like the early 1990s when I started doing this. It's a handful of things. It's being curious. It's being relational. The average client relationship in our industry, and this is why private equity loves this industry, the average client relationship is about 10 years.
Beautiful.
And that means half are longer than 10 years. So who's going to win in that kind of environment? Yeah. It's going to be relational, curious, driven people that are truth tellers that always put their client first. And you know what? That's the same today as it was in 1991. When I started. And so, if you'd said it during all those different periods, oh my gosh, no, it's going to be this technology solution. No, it's going to be this resource. No, it's going to be this. It's going to be that. No, it's kind of foundationally. I mean, you've got to stay up with the times in terms of understanding, your business. But those are secondary to being trustworthy and relational and driven. You do those things, you're going to succeed. And I would project that a decade from now, it'll be the same thing. Different set of resources, different tools, but same basic attributes.
So AI is not going to take us out anytime soon.
AI is going to have a real profound impact. I mean, the more I use it personally, I'm just amazed at
it's amazing
some of the things that it's helping me do. So yeah, it's going to profoundly change things. But I think underneath that, the value of the trusted human relationship is going to actually grow.
I totally agree.
And so the question is, how can you be all the things we just described, but then be powered by AI? I think the opportunity for the people that can kind of quarterback the resources the right way is the likes of which we've never seen before.
So of the 34 years, what's the most rewarding moment of your career?
Good question. Besides doing this podcast right here,
Man, this is
right
this
now.
is right.
Live in the
This is
moment.
right there. I think that I think this is it.
I like how you live in the moment with us. Stephen.
You know, I always tell people, whenever I ask somebody like their favorite movie, I ask them, what's one of your favorite movies? Because that unlocks their brain a little bit.
Okay.
It's hard
What's
to say.
one
the
of your
best.
favorite moments?
I'll say this: there's a principle here.
Okay.
You know, because you might say, gosh, when we do the big marquee transaction and get it done, that's the most satisfying thing. Or, you know, when you do this big project over here, you get this new client. Those things are all good, but they're not the ultimate thing. I think the ultimate thing for me, and this has happened in a variety of ways, to have a client say, you know, you've been with us for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. I've got clients I've worked with for 30 years, and they say, you are every bit a part of our leadership team and the success that we've had as anybody on our team. And there are situations where, you know, we've been in a foxhole together for a lot of years through a lot of different trials and tribulations. And I think having that sense of being a real contributor to something that's really been successful and staying true to being a truth teller in that's absolutely the thing. And that's happened in a variety of ways over the time. But, you know, it's funny. We get paid well doing what we do. That's fine. It's the satisfaction of knowing you've made a difference in somebody's business that's really cool.
That's what we call our ideal client.
I'll tell you one more thing now that my brain is kind of unfrozen. One of my partners turned 65 a couple months ago, and he won't be around a whole lot longer. He's going to retire, and we sit around and we kind of marvel because we look at our firm. We've got now 25 people. We're in Atlanta. And we're all in the office every day. That's just the culture we've got, and it's a very intense. People are working hard, and we all have lunch together, and we'll sit there at the end of a day. Sometimes we'll sit on the sofas in the middle of the office and just look around and talk about the week. And it's like the collection of people that are here that we just love. These, you know, the median age in our company now is like 31. So we've got a lot of really young people in the company, and looking around and seeing what they're doing and the fun that they're having and the way that they're making a difference in our industry. That's a really gratifying thing too. So I think it's kind of the external client thing and the internal looking at our team. It's been really fun building that.
We'll both have a massive people component. You know, and that totally makes sense to me, and I'm glad you shared that with us. Kevin, this is our season finale. We're so glad you stopped by. You're a wealth of knowledge. You've helped us so much as a company, and really appreciate all you've done in the insurance industry, and, you know, really have helped our firm, and we really, really appreciate it. I'd be remiss if I didn't say today is a historic day. That's why Kevin's in our office. We are onboarding 21 new shareholders. 21 new owners, a massive transfer of wealth and ownership to the drivers of our company, and you were a major part of that transition and helping us do that. And so I'm really glad you're here on this historic day for us. So thank you.
Well, congratulations. That is an incredible milestone. I mean, what you guys have done in terms of expanding the ownership and drawing more and more people, and you've already got an ESOP. I mean, you've already got your people own the company, but then to have an opportunity for super high performers to also be able to buy more of your equity is an amazing, awesome strategy. I think that's how you succeed in this marketplace. And it's a delight for me to be here and to see this and to be a part of it.
And thank you, Kevin, you know, from the organization and from me personally as well, for my early morning phone calls at times. And so I just appreciate your wealth of knowledge and your stewardship in helping us. Been greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Those early morning phone calls for you aren't as bad for me because I'm on East Coast time, but
Yeah,
I know
enough.
they were painful for you.
I was already up, but
Before your alarm clock.
before my alarm clock. That's true. It was
All
early.
right. Kevin, appreciate you, man.
Great. Thank you
you.
guys.